what are some danger areas and some healthy swaps that we can make with our kitchen stuff?
Three main things to think about in your kitchen. Number one is non-stick cookware. That's top of the list. Any kind of pan that looks like shiny black surface, those are probably coated with PFAS, even if they say PFOA free. So that would be the first place. If you can ditch your non-stick coated cookware, and better options would be stainless steel, cast iron, or carbon steel cookware. Number two is plastic food containers. And you really, really don't want to be microwaving food in plastic and putting in your microwave.
If you haven't done so already, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. It's a little red button. You punch that, and it's going to notify you every time we put out a new episode that can help you improve your bone health. And then also, if you haven't done so already, head over to BoneCoach.com, sign up for the free 7-day Osteoporosis Kickstart. That's going to walk you through everything you need to be doing right now to get on the path to improvement and stronger bones. After you do those two things, go ahead and press play on this episode, and I'll see you inside. Welcome to this episode of the BoneCoach Show. Joining us today to explore toxins, red light therapy, and bone health is Dr. Vivian Chen. Dr. Chen is a UK-trained medical doctor with 15 years of clinical experience. Before moving to the San Francisco Bay Area in the US, she was board certified in the UK in both internal medicine and family practice. Her world turned upside down when her daughter was hospitalized soon after being born with symptoms no doctor could figure out. Through doing her research, she was able to help her daughter recover. She also realized that the many years of chronic fatigue, acne, and brain fog she had was due to environmental toxicity. This opened the world of root causes she had never considered before as a conventional medical doctor. When she moved to San Francisco, she decided to make it her mission to help people reduce their toxin load because she believes environmental toxins to be one of the most important root causes not enough doctors are talking about. She educates via her online platform, Plateful Health, and also co-founded a red light therapy company called LUMEBOX. Dr. Vivian Chen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. You have a very unique background in that you are a conventionally trained medical doctor, and not many conventional MDs talk about toxins. So I know, you obviously had a strong reason as to why you got here with your daughter's journey, even your own health, and maybe you could just talk about that journey a little bit more.
Yes, definitely. Kevin, I feel like a lot of us who are really passionate about the topics that we educate on have had our pain and our own kind of journey through that. And now we want to share it with the whole world and help other people. And the same goes for you, and same goes for me. So I went to medical school in London at UCL. And halfway through medical school, I started to feel really tired, unexplained kind of fatigue, not having run miles and miles. I'm just so tired, brain fogged. I had cystic acne. I went to lots of doctors. They all ran tests and just told me everything was fine. There was nothing wrong with me. And at the time, I didn't know any better. So I just carried on with my life. But now in retrospect, I can pinpoint to one event from which my symptoms started. And that was when a dentist drilled 2 big amalgam fillings out of my mouth and replaced it with more amalgam filling. And we know now amalgam filling, 50% mercury, and mercury is a neurotoxin. So that explains a lot now for me in retrospect, but I didn't know at the time. Anyway, I continued. I was actually quite high functioning with the help of lots of caffeine, lots of coffee, wine to help me relax at night. And it really wasn't until I had my daughter when I was qualified as a doctor. So at that point, I was a family physician, having, gone through board certification in both family medicine and internal medicine. I had my daughter, and when she was 8 weeks old, she stopped feeding completely. Like, she just wouldn't feed at all. Like, when I was breastfeeding her, and when she sees my breast, she will turn away and start crying. Things got so bad, she actually had to be hospitalized because she got so dehydrated. And for me as a doctor and her mom, that just completely broke me. The one person I wanted to help the most in the world, I couldn't help as a very experienced, qualified doctor. My brain was just like, why can't you help your own child? What did you miss at school, medical school, that meant that, now you don't have the tools that you need? So my maternal instincts kicked in. I did a lot of research, and I applied what I learned at medical school, which is reading scientific literature. And I found a paper from 1982 talking about symptoms and signs of cow's milk protein allergy. And that matched her symptoms, feed aversion. And we swapped her milk. Her pediatrician didn't believe me at the time, but because they just couldn't figure out what was wrong with her, they agreed to try. And after a week, she was better. So that was kind of my first turning point. And then after she got better, I started to ask, well, how come she has a food allergy? I don't have a food allergy. My husband doesn't have a food allergy. Not in our genes to have food allergies. And then I realized food allergies were an epidemic. Like, so many children were now developing food allergies. And that basically was my entry point into this rabbit hole of digging into environmental toxins, root causes, diet, our lifestyle. And once you've kind of gone down that road, you really can't come back, because then you realize, gosh, all these years I didn't realize, I could have helped my patient with all this information. So when I moved to the US, I decided I'm going to tell more people about this, because more people need to know this. Conventional doctors are not learning this at medical school. And so I started my platform, and here we are.
And do you still see patients today in that formal setting?
Not anymore. So I didn't want to go into that 10-minute per patient model again, because it just wasn't amenable to me explaining root causes to patients. And that was part of the frustration of how I burnt out in the UK. I just couldn't do what I wanted to do and tell them what I wanted to tell them. So when I moved here, I actually called myself a health coach. I don't know what to call myself, honestly. Like, I didn't want to be in the 10-minute appointment models. And so I didn't get licensed here in the US as well, because, that meant going down that route of, retraining in that 10-minute appointment model. So I started educating online, and then I help clients. I'm kind of basically that guide. I look over everything and try and tease out what the root causes could be. And it's kind of like you, like I tell them, okay, maybe you should consider this, discuss this, ask for these labs. Have you talked about these supplements with your doctor? And that I'm their guide, so that they can take this information to their doctor and find the best solution.
And I've heard a lot of medical doctors that I've talked to also, they share that similar frustration, where they don't feel like the current model they're in is designed to fully help their patients achieve their best possible health outcome, because they really do want to see their patients get better, but 100%. The model that they're in is not really designed to help them do that. Can you talk about maybe some of the frustrations in that model, and why somebody who goes down the path of understanding toxins and root causes and things like that may not feel like it has a place in that setting?
Oh, 100%. Unfortunately, the way the medical system is set up is, especially in the US, you're paid for these like codes, right? These performance-based codes. Nutrition is not one of those codes. If you gave nutrition advice, you don't get any money. You get money for prescribing and, doing tests and giving diagnoses, labeling your patients. But if you were trying to look up their lifestyle, no money. Nutrition, no money. So, I don't blame medical doctors for not wanting to talk about those things, or feeling like if I did, I wouldn't be able to support my family and make a living, right? So I really feel for medical doctors, and I don't before I kind of go down that route, I just want to say I have nothing against conventional medicine. Like, I feel the rigor and the science-based approach is amazing, and that's what we need. And it's excellent for acute trauma, acute conditions, infections. It's life-saving. But the bulk of chronic diseases originate from our lifestyle, from our nutrition. So not tackling that aspect is a really big myth in my books. And I know my colleagues who have now realized all these things feel very frustrated, because in the US, they've, by the time they graduate, it's like $200,000 in medical school fees and living expenses. You have to repay that, right? Like, how do you repay that if you're not billing for things you can bill for, right? And I do have a lot of people reach out and say, how do you make this work? Like, because I want to do what you do. Can you tell us? And I feel like if you're a medical doctor, the two ways. I mean, you can go cash based, and then you can charge for the full hour. And I know functional medicine doctors do that. But then it's like, how do you get patients? Can you get enough patients who are interested in this to make this work? Sutter Health actually now has an integrative medicine arm, which is really great, because now you can use insurance to see doctors who are interested. And I personally, my PCP is a integrative doctor, and he spends an hour with me for my annual checkup. And that's what you need.
Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I want to take one more minute to talk about, if you are somebody who was newly diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, and you're at a point where you're stressed, you're worried, you're overwhelmed, you have no idea where to start or how to get started getting confident in your plan, I want to tell you about the Stronger Bone Solution Program. Over 5,000 people have come through the Stronger Bone Solution Program, and it walks you through the exact process you need to fill in the missing pieces, uncover critical things in your plan that you may not be aware of, and help you make modifications, adjustments, and tweaks to get you to the place where you're building stronger bones. I want you to get confident in your plan so that you can focus on living life and enjoying the life that you deserve with the people you love most. So if that's where you want to be, head over to bonecoach.com/apply and apply for our Stronger Bone Solution Program right now. I'm Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I want to see you inside this program. I want to help you get on the path to improvement and stronger bones. Hope to see you inside very soon. Let's get back to the episode. For someone like you, who you've personally experienced the being tired, the fatigue, the brain fog, you knew there were toxins that were contributing, and you took this journey to figure that out for yourself, not just for your daughter, but for yourself too. Can you talk about what that journey looks like? Like, what are the challenges you're encountering as you're trying to make these improvements? What are the tools you're using? How are you making changes in your lifestyle? How are you really making meaningful progress to get healthy and well again?
I love that question, because it is a journey, right? It's not overnight. It took years and years. And I would say the biggest challenge I faced, and that was with me being a doctor, is getting the eye rolls and the gaslighting from my own doctors when I go ask them, like, could I be mercury toxic? Can you test me? No, the mercury in amalgam is bound. It doesn't get vaporized. It doesn't get absorbed into your body. Well, actually, if you look at this study, that just, dismantled what you told me, right? So, like, we know there are studies showing that. And I had to go and pull these studies to show them, like, hey, no, what you say and what you've been told at medical school is not true. That's, we actually have to relearn that. But there was a lot of challenges there. And then, so I had to do things for myself. I had to advocate for myself and relearn, at medical school, we're taught how the liver works. Like, we were taught the detox pathway. We were taught about Krebs cycle. So I had to apply that knowledge now into, like, okay, so what does that look like in terms of what food do I need to eat? What lifestyle support these detox organs work better? Because I wasn't big believer in supplements. Supplements, I feel like it's a bridge, like it can bridge gaps in your nutrition, but it shouldn't be the first place that we go to. So I took a very like a food as medicine approach. But the first step I did was to try and reduce and minimize my exposures through daily lives. And I was exposed to so many, like all the things that I talk about now on my platform, I knew none of them. I did everything that you're not supposed to do according to my platform. And it was a step-by-step process. Like you do one thing at a time. And over time, when you look back, you're like, oh, I haven't had a headache for so long now. Wow, I didn't have to have a nap for 3 days out of the week. Whereas like I used to have to, need to nap like every single day. And then slowly and gradually you start to see the progress, and that kind of fuels even more like your actions, because you're getting confirmation that things are improving. So yeah, it was mainly reduce exposures first. That's always number one, because if you reduce the amount coming in, you have less detoxification to do. And then I took actions to support my detox organ.
And for the average person, where is that toxin exposure coming from? Like thinking about just a person's average day, like the activities they're doing, the things that are taking place, it's going to vary for people, but any common places we need to be looking out for?
Yeah. And I hate being Debbie Downer, but I think it's important to be aware of the reality of our modern day world, which is heavily polluted. So we have in excess of 85,000 chemicals that are registered for use by the EPA in everyday products, 85,000. And out of those, there are about 3,000 to 4,000 that are high frequency. So these are things you're likely to encounter multiple times a day through everyday products like cleaning products, personal care products. And out of those, a very small percentage are ever tested for human safety. So these are chemicals coming into our everyday products that we're putting on our bodies and maybe breathing in, and they've never been shown to be safe for humans, which is, it was just like mind-blowing to me when I first realized, because, I used to think that we were protected by the regulators, but people who regulated these chemicals, but actually most of them are not regulated. It's kind of like in the US, you have to prove that something is harmful before it's taken off the shelf. Whereas in Europe, we have a different approach, right? So we practice caution, like you have to show something is safe before it's incorporated. And as a result, in personal care products, 1,100 chemicals have been banned for use in the EU. And here, I think only 12. There's a massive difference. So in terms of where we're getting exposed, I think the best way I approach this is just to see, like, what's the thing we consume the most, right? Like, so it's going to be air, number one. We breathe 11,000 liters of air per day. So what are you breathing in? Air fresheners, which contain endocrine disruptors. So common, right? Like everywhere you go, there's air fresheners and people spray it at home. And I completely understand, like I used to love that stuff too, right? Like, cause you're kind of marketed to believe that if your house smells nice, then your house is cleaner, but actually it's dirtier in a way because you're breathing in now more chemicals. And the way fragrance, a scent, sticks to a product is usually with the use of chemicals like phthalates. So phthalates are endocrine disruptors that in the research have been associated with fertility issues, with menstrual issues, with earlier menopause, with weight gain, so many different allergies, so many different things. And we're breathing those in multiple times a day through different products. So air fresheners, you're thinking about your household products that you're spraying, and every time you're spraying that, it's in the air and you're breathing it in. So air is probably number one. And then I would think about what are you drinking and eating? So those are two big kind of routes of entry too. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't the case, but tap water in the US, there are many, many contaminants that we really don't want to be drinking. For example, last year, there was a study that showed about 45% of US water tested positive for PFAS. So that's another chemical. PFAS is, you may have heard of the term forever chemical. So forever chemical are these chemicals that make things slippery. So think nonstick cookware, waterproofing, stain proofing. So it's mainly used for those things. And it's been shown in studies to be associated with thyroid issues, weight gain, fertility issues, again, immune conditions, and more things. So filtering tap water, it would be a good idea. And, I know everybody's limited by the different budget. So reverse osmosis would kind of be top of the range if you can get something on this thing. But even if that's out of reach, even like a pitcher type filter would be better than nothing.
And that's so helpful because, you mentioned right there, scented candles, air fresheners, the things we're breathing in. Gosh, when I was growing up, it was like, you thought that those things made the house cleaner. They're better. They're welcoming. They're inviting.
Right.
Really, they're not, right? They're contributing to a downward health spiral. So maybe in those situations, I don't know what your recommendations are. I would personally say maybe swap those with some essential oils or some kind of diffuser,
100%.
something like that. Do you have any favorite essential oils that you like?
You mean smells or brands?
Oh, just smells in general.
Smells. Oh, I love lavender and eucalyptus. Those are my two favorites.
Yeah. Lavender, eucalyptus. I like frankincense personally.
Oh, yeah.
And peppermint is another good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are good swaps that you can make for those things. And then you mentioned drinking and tap water. You can go to the ewg.org / is it? I think it's tap water, right?
Tap water.
Is that right? And you can search by zip code or like look up your zip code, see how many contaminants are in the local water, see like what it is that you are drinking, consuming. If you're just drinking tap water, then you really know, okay, there is something I need to address. And this is it's not to scare people or to make you worry about every little thing that you're doing. It's to make you aware, because if you're aware, you can address these things. And the last thing you mentioned eating. Also, let's talk about kitchen. And because this is a touch point, like we're eating multiple times a day. We're preparing food for our spouses, partners, significant others, loved ones, kids, grandkids, many, many touch points. And I know one of your passions too is sharing with people, like, how do you live a non-toxic lifestyle in the kitchen? So could we talk about what are some danger areas and some healthy swaps that we can make with our kitchen stuff?
Yes, for sure. That's one of my favorite topics. So I would say that 3 main things to think about in your kitchen. Number 1 is nonstick cookware. That's top of the list. So again, that's a source of PFAS, the group of chemicals I talked about earlier, the forever chemicals. So any kind of pan that looks like shiny black surface, those are probably coated with PFAS, even if they say PFOA free, because PFOA is just one out of 7,000 different PFAS chemicals. They could just replace it with a different PFAS chemical, and studies have shown that they have similar impacts on our health.
Oh, so deceptive marketing, really?
Yes. Yeah, and PFOA were kind of voluntarily phased out in the US anyway. So almost no cookware is made with PFOA now. They're just made with alternative PFAS chemicals, which are just as bad for us. So that would be the first place. If you can ditch your nonstick coated cookware, and better options would be stainless steel, cast iron, or carbon steel cookware. So that would be number 1. Number 2 is plastic. So plastic food containers. And you really, really don't want to be microwaving food in plastic and putting in your microwave. There was a study from last year that showed that when you microwave, you're increasing the amount of microplastic that's released into your food, which then you're eating. So try to swap plastic Tupperware or glass, and they're like really reasonably priced now. I went to Costco the other day and you could get a full set for like $20. So that could be like a low hanging fruit. And, if you wanted to microwave, you can microwave in glass or transfer it onto a plate.
Yeah, I think that's great. And like something I personally do is if it's like a soup or something, like we just made some really good soups with bone broth as a base and stuff like that. Instead of like heating that up in the microwave, even though we do store things in glass Pyrex containers, we take them and we put them into a stainless steel pot and just reheat
Yeah.
it like it's the regular
Yes.
soup again on the stove, so that you're not having that additional plastic exposure. One thing
Yeah.
I've also seen people do, and it's almost like a pet peeve of mine, is they will take plastic utensils and stir hot things like
Oh,
like soups and things like that. And just kind of like what Dr. Vivian's talking about here, taking plastic, putting it in the microwave, heating it up together with food. Well, if you're taking plastic utensils and dipping it in hot water and touching food and stirring things up or letting it sit in there, especially like holiday meals and stuff, rethink that. Use some other maybe stainless steel spoon or something like that to make that swap.
yeah, definitely. And on that same point, saran wrap, people wrap hot food, they cover it, and then you see all the steam coming off the top. Like that saran wrap, the microplastic come out of that very easily because of how pliable it is. So you really don't want to be using that around hot food. And along the same line, dishwasher. So you don't want to be putting plastic Tupperware, plastic water cups into your dishwasher either, because that encourages the leaching of microplastic into the water the next time you pour water into that closed container.
Interesting. And then you mentioned in terms of cookware for cooking on the stove, you mentioned cast iron, you mentioned stainless steel, you mentioned carbon steel, something like that. What about ceramic?
Oh yeah. So there are these newer kind of they're marketed as ceramic coated nonstick, but they're not true ceramic. It's a kind of a bond, a gel on top, which they kind of seal on top of aluminum. So think aluminum, it's basically aluminum in the center, and they put a nonstick coating, which is sol gel, silicon dioxide based coating on top. Now, it doesn't have PFAS, so that's a positive. So it's probably better than your Teflon coated, PFAS coated nonstick. So if you really, really must have nonstick, that's going to be a better option. So, green pan, like you can find these in Target. Those are ceramic coated. My two question marks about those is, number one, when I've reached out to these companies, it's very hard to know exactly what they put into that coating. Like, did they put, colorants in there? Like they just tell you it's sol gel, silicon dioxide, that's natural, it's like sand. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't just use that. Like, what else did you add in to that mixture, right? And they never tell me. They just say it's proprietary, and I don't like that. So, I have question marks around what it's actually made up of. And I think there was a lawsuit against Green Pan for that. And I'm not saying Green Pan is wrong. I'm not saying, like
Sure.
lawsuit don't mean like that anything issue, like anyone can sue anyone, but I did have question marks of my own anyway. And the other thing is, once that very thin coating is scratched, now your food comes into contact with aluminum. And, things like acidic foods, hot foods really can encourage the leaching of aluminum into your food. And, the research on that is still contentious at this point, but there's a possibility that this can increase risk of cognitive impairment like Alzheimer's. There is a link there. And, if there's a link, I'd rather avoid while more research is being done. I don't want to be a guinea pig. So I prefer, I don't use aluminum cookware. And if those pans, when scratched, expose me to aluminum, then I don't like to use those either.
Yeah. And for the people that are trying to switch, and I love we're talking like tactical, very specific things, because this is the person in their kitchen every day and they're like, what do I do here? How do I make this swap? So just one more note on the switching from like a non-stick coating pan to something else. I think one of the biggest sticking points for people if not changing is, oh, well, if I use stainless steel, it's just going to stick, and it's like eggs or something. They're just going to stick to the bottom. It's going to be a horrible experience. What are your I have my own recommendations. What are your recommendations for people when they're making a transition like that? How do they keep it from sticking in a stainless or
yeah, it's doable. You just have to learn. It's a different way, right? It took me watching YouTube videos a couple of times to be like, oh, that's all you have to do. And you can do it in two ways. One is a very well seasoned cast iron. That's pretty much non-stick. I have one at home. I can make crepes on that, pancakes on that, no sticking whatsoever. Number two is stainless steel can be non-stick. Like you just have to heat it up on low medium for a few minutes so that the gaps between the metal start to seal, the metal expands, basically reducing any gaps, and the gaps is why it sticks. So when it expands, you throw a few drops of water on there and you see, balls bouncing on that pan. It means now it's ready for you to add oil and start cooking. And usually that doesn't stick for me too. I'd love to know your tip.
Yeah, I do the same. I'll use a little bit more oil or something like that once the pan is already heated up, and that just helps me. Or I'll use a little bit more ghee or coconut oil or something like that. I'll put an extra bit in, and that helps prevent, for me anyway, it from sticking to the bottom. So
yeah, it's just learning a different way of cooking. But this is kind of like the traditional way of cooking. When I travel, I just went to Asia recently over the holidays. People cook with cast iron and stainless steel there. And they do eggs and all kinds of stuff. That's how we used to cook before PFAS and Teflon was invented, right? So there was a way back then. So we just got to find our way back there.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And let's talk about toxins and bone health, if we can. Like, what are the toxins that you see are of most concern that can affect bone health?
Yeah. So there was recently a study showing that PFAS, so again, going back to that nonstick chemical, a higher concentration of PFAS was associated with lower bone density. Now, we don't know the reason why, but there was another separate study showing that PFAS was associated with early onset menopause. And we know that the earlier your menopause, the lower your bone density, right, at adjusted ages. So could it be because these women are going into menopause earlier? Because the PFAS and bone density study didn't show a correlation for men. So that's very interesting. So men seem to be able to escape the lower lower bone density impact of PFAS, but women were affected. So that's a very interesting study to me, because that was done on humans. Before that, most of the data were on animals or in petri dish studies, which, are still interesting mechanistic studies, but they're not solid, hard data on humans. So that was kind of the first time I was like, wow, we're really getting somewhere in terms of scientific literature. But, even before that, I was observing quite a lot of postmenopausal women coming in with lead toxicity all of a sudden. And, when you survey their lifestyle, it's like there's no lead exposure, no lead in the water, no lead in their cookware, no lead in the, obviously lead is naturally occurring. So there is going to be some lead exposure through food, but not to the extent where it's causing toxicity. And we know that lead can be stored in bone. So as bone is turning over and perhaps more rapidly in menopause, and you're getting bone loss, that lead is now coming out into the bloodstream and causing symptoms for women. And so I always wonder, what's the chicken and egg there? Could the lead and heavy metal presence be triggering inflammation and therefore encouraging more bone loss? That's a question for me. We definitely know from petri dish studies that these heavy metals And even chemicals like BPA, phthalates, they cause inflammation, right? And as you know, like bone remodeling requires a lot of these immune signaling growth factors and things like that. So if there are chemicals in the bone that's messing with that, that could be causing bone density issues too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Menopause, postmenopause, you have that decrease in hormones that's taking place. Estrogen has that protective effect on bone. When that bone loss starts to happen, it can release that lead that was stored in the bone back into the system. There's this auto intoxication that takes place. And sometimes the fatigue, the weakness, the brain fog, that kind of stuff that's associated with that period of a woman's life, that could be associated with the heavy metals that are being released.
100%. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, and that's really interesting about the connection between the other chemicals that you just talked about and bone density. It's really interesting. And it's probably some other hormone connection there as well.
Yeah, exactly. We know that BPA and phthalates are potent endocrine disruptors, so they definitely affect our hormones. So I do think that there is a big hormone and then bone kind of axis and connection there.
Now, you also have a passion in red light therapy, so much so that you actually founded a red light therapy company called LUMEBOX.
Yes.
Tell us about red light therapy, what you saw as like the health benefits of it, and why you were so passionate about it. You went on to create this company around it.
Yeah, thank you. So again, this is another passion that has come from pain. So this time was pain, witnessing my dad suffer and be bedbound for about 3 months through a condition called piriformis syndrome. It's a muscular condition. He was initially misdiagnosed as having sciatica, so that kind of delayed his healing a little bit. But he lives in the UK. And then, when he first started saying he was in pain and he was bedbound, I was like, oh, nothing, probably just go away. But then after 2 months, he still wasn't getting better. And that's through after going to doctors and being prescribed different medications. So I actually flew home to help him. And at the time, this was many years ago, I had a portable red light therapy device I was using for my skin because I had read that red light therapy can stimulate collagen production and reduce wrinkles. I was like, I need this. But then I also read that red light therapy could help with pain and muscular healing. So I was like, I wonder if this could help him. I brought it with me when I went back. This device is not very powerful. So he had to use it on himself like 3-4 times a day, half an hour at a time. But he did get better. And it was like 10 days, he was up and walking. It really opened my eyes to this modality. I had never heard about or read about at medical school. And when I dug into the research, my mind was blown. And I was asking myself, why is this not more widely available? We should be making this more available, because there were over 2,000 studies on red light therapy on PubMed for different conditions, ranging from arthritis to skin health to eczema to you name it. There was a study on so many different things. And I thought, how can one modality help that many things? Must be snake oil. But because it was on PubMed, I was like, there must be something to it. And what it came down to really is that red light therapy supports the mitochondria. And mitochondria, if you remember back to our high school biology days, the powerhouse inside our cell. What does that mean? Well, every single cell, in order to carry out its function, needs energy. And the energy comes in the form of ATP, which is the currency for energy in the cells. And mitochondria help us make ATP. So that's where this powerhouse is generating ATPs from the food we eat, from the oxygen, and pumping out ATP. And now when the cell has ATP, it can do whatever it's supposed to do. So in the brain, it's remembering things for us, right? In the liver, it's detoxifying for us. In the gut, it's producing enzymes and digesting for us. So when a cell doesn't have optimal mitochondrial function, it cannot do its job properly. And now you have diminished function in whatever organ it is, right? And it'll show up differently to different people. Some people will have brain fog. Some people will have exercise intolerance. Some people can't detoxify very well now or have hormone imbalance. It looks differently for different people. But at the core, at the root is mitochondrial dysfunction. And with each decade, we're accumulating stresses that attack our mitochondria such that every decade leads to a 10% decline in mitochondrial function. So by the time we're 50, our mitochondria is 50% down in its ability to make energy. So I personally think that actually accounts for a lot of the symptoms and signs we attribute to aging. And it's not really aging. Like if we can mitigate and avoid some of these stresses that we're accumulating in our mitochondria or help our mitochondria produce more ATP, we can probably, counteract some of those aging symptoms and signs. So that's why I'm so passionate, because I feel like it's really going down into the root of so many conditions. And even things like type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, there's now an understanding that mitochondria is involved in that too.
Now, I know you're very evidence-based too, and any interesting studies that relate to red light therapy and its impacts on health too? I'd love to hear about those.
Oh, so many. And if we're just talking about randomized control, like the gold standard type of studies, there are studies showing that red light therapy could increase when you work out, the number of reps that you do and muscle gain. It can improve blood flow and aid recovering of muscles to reduce soreness after workouts too. So, if you were looking to maintain your muscle mass, right, which is really important, it's related to bone health, right? And you're doing heavy resistance training, red light therapy is really helpful in that respect because it can help you work out more and reduce that recovery soreness. There's also some evidence on red light therapy being able to help reduce pain temporarily. So that's through reducing inflammation, and some studies showing that it can actually directly impact nerve fibers carrying pain as well, which is so interesting. So it definitely helped my dad. I would say that it's different for everyone because pain really is, it's so multifactorial, right? So it would be irresponsible for me to say, hey, this is like the best painkiller. I can't say that. It really depends on what's causing the pain in the first place. But, it can help with inflammation. It can help with, some of the signaling of the pain. And I think the most robust evidence really is with skin. And in a way, it's probably easier to study because it's so visible. But there are a few randomized controlled trials, some using like half phase, so you only treat half the phase. So you're like literally controlling for everything, right? That person eating the same diet and all the lifestyle stuff. But the only difference is one side got red light therapy and they just blocked it, the other side didn't. And after a few weeks, they saw a difference in wrinkles, pigmentation, texture, resilience, bounciness of the skin. So I use it for my skin every single day still. And I also use it for, reduction of pain. I use it when I worked out too much and there's soreness. I use it to help me relax at night and help me sleep better. My kids use it. My husband uses it. So it's like a very well-loved tool in our health.
I love it. And you, I've got a LUMEBOX. You shared one with me. Gosh, it was maybe a year ago or something like that. I still have it, still use it. Absolutely love it.
Oh, thank you so much.
portable and easy to use. And tell me a little bit about the design of this. Like, actually, just talk about like what is the actual device itself.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's a portable device, and the biggest advantage is that it doesn't have to be plugged in, so you're not attached to a wall, like, you know, sitting against the wall. I like to have it stacked a lot, so while I'm doing my red light therapy, I can be reading, I could be meditating, I can be doing other things, right? We're also busy. And what I observed with my dad was that if you don't have a powerful enough device, and you could be needing to use this thing for hours and hours a day just to get the right dose, right? Because light, I think of light as like a nutrient, and it's not like a supplement. You need to take enough of it for you to see a benefit. Same with light. If you use a very low quality, low irradiance, low power device, you're just not going to see the benefit. And that's why a lot of people say, oh, I've tried it, it doesn't work, because you haven't given yourself enough of a dose yet. So I wanted a portable device that I could have it stack with, but that was powerful, and it didn't exist on the market. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make it. So LUMEBOX is heavier than some of the portable devices because it has a really powerful battery, and that's what can fuel the high irradiance. And really, if you're thinking about joint health, you want something with high irradiance, because the higher the irradiance, the more that light can penetrate deeper down. And in terms of wavelength, you're also wanting more kind of the near infrared part of the spectrum, because that's the wavelength that can travel through tissue much better than red light, which is, you know, visible light that you can see, which is better for skin because it doesn't penetrate.
And I see there are both options on the device.
Yes.
Where it says red and NIR, so near infrared, and you can choose to put either just the red light on, the near infrared on, or you can put both on at the same time. So why would you do one over the other? Or
yeah, that's a great question. So red is better for your skin. So let's say, you know, you want to particularly target your skin, you can just do red. Some people skin are very sensitive to heat, and near infrared can heat up, right? So this, you know, if you don't want to heat up your skin, for example, on your face, then you want to just do red, no near infrared. I personally do both just because I'm not sensitive to heat, so I can do both. So I wanted to give people that option, because I know, for example, if you have rosacea, very sensitive to heat, and if you were doing near infrared, you could be like, oh no, this is now getting too hot, and now my rosacea is going to flare, right? That's not good for for your rosacea. So that's one reason. And the other one is, let's say you're in the bedroom and your partner's sleeping, and you want to treat like back pain. Now you have the option to just put it in near infrared, right, where you can't really see. If you put it in near infrared, you can't really see a bright light at all. Like if you don't want to wake up your partner who's sleeping, you just put it in near infrared, and then you can treat the back as near infrared penetrate tissue better. So like there's that option, but generally, if you want to use it, like if you want just an easy way to use it, just put it in combined mode, because then you get both red and near infrared. But if you wanted to single out because of particular reasons, you can do that too. And we tested I third-party tested LUMEBOX for irradiance. So I didn't verify irradiance with one of those handheld light meters, which are not reliable. We're also registered with the FDA. I also tested for EMS as well, because that's really important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And then any last couple questions on this before we tell people where they can find you also. So on this device here, because I really do think this is a really interesting, handy device that you can use, and you can even put it behind you. Like if you're sitting down in a chair, which obviously you don't want to be sitting all day long, but if you are going to sit down for a minute, you can put that right on your lower back. You can move it to different areas. I wake up in the morning, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll rest it right here and give my thyroid a little love.
Oh yes. Oh gosh, like thyroid. There are quite a few studies on thyroid that are human studies showing that it reduced Hashimoto's antibodies, and even a study that showed that people were able to reduce medications. And again, I think thyroid is not something we want to mess with. You really need to be monitored by your doctor very closely, because if, let's say you're taking a medication, Hashimoto's, and you started doing red light therapy and your thyroid started to improve, let's say, now your medication needs to be adjusted. Otherwise, you're actually taking too much, right? But if you weren't monitored, you wouldn't know that. So that's why we have a caution in the manual to like, you must work with your doctor, because if your thyroid was to improve, somebody needs to be adjusting your medication.
Sure. And but generally, like, this is it's a safe device, it's easy to use. And then how far away to effects? I think this is a big thing when it comes to red light therapy, is people are like, gosh, does it have to be touching? Or like, where am I going to get the most benefits? When it's probably not when it's 10 feet away, right? But maybe if I bring it closer. So what distance do we need to have it away from us to get certain effects?
Yeah, I love that question. And this is something I teach in our Kickstarter guide. When you become a customer, I send you all this information. So, because I truly believe in the power of information. So like, if you understand the technology and the device, you can adapt it to your own health, and what your body is telling you. Because just like how you and I will tan very differently, we're going to react differently to red light therapy. Like, you may only need 2 minutes and you're like, I'm good. I don't have pain anymore. I may need 15 minutes, right? So there's a learning curve there where you kind of need to do like try different wavelengths, different length of time on your body to see what is the point where you get the most return. But in terms of distance, that's why I specified such a powerful device, because when you have a powerful device, you can adjust the dose by moving it further away, right? Because that dose is diluted by distance. That's why in our Kickstarter guide, I tell everybody, if you're doing your face for skin health, have it 5 inches or 6 inches away, because that's the perfect distance for it to hit your skin, and the dose is just right for skin, because our skin doesn't need a lot of light. You only need to do 5 minutes of LUMEBOX at 5-6 inches, and you should be able to see a benefit. Although, everyone's different. Like, I have customers who say, I do 12 minutes and that's great for me. And some say just 3 minutes and it's fine. So there is variability, but the general rule is you want it a distance away if you're doing your skin. But if you want to target something deep, let's say joint, muscles, now you want that device much closer, because distance scatters the light. And when the light's scattered, it doesn't penetrate as well. So when you want the light to penetrate deeper, you want it closer. Now, how close, again, depends on the person, because some people have sensitive skin and they don't tolerate light touching their skin, like it's too hot for them. So in our manual, because we don't know, what different people's skin are like, so we kind of say, try it at this distance away and see how it goes. Don't have it touching skin, just because out of 100 people, there'll be 3 or 4 people who say, no, it's too hot for me. I don't want it to touch my skin. But if you feel like it's not too hot, then the closer, the better, really. But also, we don't want you to get it so hot that you're burning yourself. Yeah. Which is very unlikely with an LED-based device, right? Like, that's why lasers are not commercially available, because that's so much more powerful. You're more likely to burn yourself through lasers. But yeah, like closer and near infrared for something that's deep, further away and red for something superficial.
Great. Now, I have 2 last quick questions. Now, Dr. Vivian and I spent about 30 to 45 minutes before this podcast, and we were just catching up, chatting for a little bit. So the sun is already going down where I'm at. Yeah. And she's still got a little bit of sun. So we're going to wrap this up in just a sec, but I want to make sure I get 2 other questions. So the first one is, when people see red light or near infrared, Do you have to have eye protection? Like, do you have to wear eye
Mm,
protection when that happens, or could damage happen to the eyes if you don't do that?
Again, so that's a nuanced question. 2 years ago, there was a study that came out of my alma mater, UCL, where they showed low-level red light therapy for 3 minutes, first thing in the morning, helped improve eyesight. And so that was actually publicized in a very big podcast. And people started getting their red light therapy devices and looking directly into them. But what was left out was that this was really low irradiance, like 10 milliwatts or something like that. Now, LUMEBOX is 140, like 14 times that. You really don't want to be looking directly into a LUMEBOX without a study showing that it's safe for the eyes, right? So we actually provide goggles because we don't know everyone's health condition. But there is research out there showing that low-level red light may be beneficial for eye health. So what I say is, if you're looking directly at the light, like you're doing your face and it's like straight in your face, if it's going to feel probably too bright, and you want to wear those goggles to protect your eyes until we know more.
Sure.
But if you're, and this is particular if you have near infrared on, because this is where if you're registered with, you're following the regulations stipulate that if you have a device that emits near infrared, you should tell your customers to protect their eyes. Not every company does that, but officially that's the line, because there are some studies that show prolonged exposure to near infrared can increase your cataract risk over time. So we're talking years and years of like really a lot of exposure. We're not talking like a few minutes here and there. But because of that precedent, this is now the kind of official recommendation. So I also follow that regulation. So I do tell people, like, if you're looking directly and it's near infrared mode, you should wear goggles just to be on the safe side. And I think more and more research will be done to like tell us exactly what dose of red light is beneficial. And I think at that point, once we've had more than just one or two studies, that's when I can draw conclusions and translate that into, telling people what to do. Because, these two studies, they're based on like 12 people. I don't think that we're there yet in terms of recommending red light therapy for eyesight just yet.
And thank you so much for speaking to the nuance of this, because I know, like, when I look at new devices and things like that, I'm interested in the nuance. I'm thinking a lot of these things that are going through my head. So I'm glad that you're familiar with them and know them. Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Bone Coach Show. If you're finding it helpful, please leave a positive rating and review. Hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast or the channel. That lets us help more people and reach and serve more people. And it also lets us know that this is helpful to you on your journey to better health and stronger bones. And then also, right down in the show notes, you can actually find a link to my free Bone Healthy Recipes Guide. That's going to give you access to some amazing and delicious recipes to support your journey to stronger bones. And then also, we have a link to my free Stronger Bones Masterclass in the show notes too. And that is the 3-step process that has helped people in over 1,500 cities around the world get confident in their plan for stronger bones. Over 110,000 people have taken part in this, and it's been really, really helpful for them. And I want you to have free access to it too. So add your name and email right down there in the show notes, get access to that free Stronger Bones Masterclass, and let's get you confident in your Stronger Bones plan today. Last question would be anything for red light on bone health?
Oh, yes. So I have done quite a bit of reading on that because I'm perimenopausal and I'm thinking about my bone health actively. So I love all the information you teach. I learn a lot from you. When I look at the studies, there are studies that show that red light therapy can support bone formation, reduce bone loss. But these studies are mainly using lasers, and they're done in rats or mice or rabbits, so animal-based studies. There are no LED-based studies on humans yet. Like, they're saying, yeah, if you hold this device on your hip for 10 minutes a day, your bone density is going to increase after a year. I've not seen that study yet. But what is interesting to me is the data on muscle, right? And helping you gain that muscle mass, muscle strength. And we all know, like, why do we care about bone health? We're trying to prevent falls, right? And what causes falls is weak musculature or poor balance, right? Or, poor eyesight. There's so many different factors, but poor balance, not enough kind of muscle support or support around a joint is one of the main contributors. And red light therapy can actually help with that. And, we know that LED-based devices can help with that. So I feel like that's where I would be targeting. Like that's certainly how I use it. I use it when I'm doing my resistance training, try and build bone health. But I don't know at this point in time whether LED-based commercially available devices, but if you were just shining it at the spine, whether that even penetrates through to the bone itself to make a difference. But it can support other things that you're doing to support your bone health.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now let's go ahead and let people know where they can find you. And I also want to talk about, you've done something really nice for our audience too with this. So with the LUMEBOX. So maybe we could talk about where can people find you. I'll already tell them one place, which is Instagram, Plateful Health. She puts out amazing content. She is like walks you through, very engaging. I absolutely love the stuff that she does. So where all can they find you?
Oh, thank you so much. So yeah, as you said, Instagram is at plateful.health, plateful.health. I also have a website. So if you don't like social media, I do send regular newsletters about toxin exposure, detoxification as well. And you can sign up via my website, www.platefulhealth.com. And Kevin, since we talked about cookware, I do have a cookware guide. So I'm happy to share that link with you if you want to put that in the show notes. And if you download that guide, you're automatically on my email list too. And then if you are interested in the LUMEBOX, Kevin has a special link that we made for this podcast. It's www.thelumebox.com/BoneCoach. And we can put that link. And if you use that link, it will get you $260 off. So the device will be $369.
Off of your LUMEBOX. Yeah, that's really generous of you, Dr. Vivian. I appreciate this. And it's an awesome device. Absolutely love it. And have used it for the past year. So thank you so much. Now, for everybody listening, just like Dr. Vivian had just said, you can find all the resources, show notes, everything we mentioned today. They're going to be over at bonecoach.com, and just look down below the show notes and either the podcast on bonecoach.com. You can find this episode. And I want to thank everybody again so much for your time. We'll see you in the next episode. Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. Hope you found that episode helpful and that you enjoyed it. Just one last reminder, if you haven't done so already, head over to bonecoach.com, sign up for your free 7-day osteoporosis kickstart. It's going to tell you everything you need to do to start getting on the path to improvement. Hope you found this helpful. I'm your Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I'll see you soon.